Today, I want to share a story so haunting it lingers long after the last word. A story that proves how one choice can rewrite a life that was meant to be destroyed. It takes place in the savage beauty of the Wild West, where golden grass sways beneath cold morning fog, and justice rarely rides alone. Out here, survival isn't promised, and mercy can change the course of history. This story begins with a single spark. One woman crawling out of the desert after being cast aside as worthless, an act of cruelty so small to her captors, yet powerful enough to ignite a clash of fate, honor, and defiance. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Morning fog lay heavy over the Texas plains, draping the wide grassland in a pale veil of ash and dull gold. Dawn had only just begun to break, the sun barely lifting itself above the horizon, brushing the sky with muted streaks of rose and amber. On any other morning, the sight might have stirred awe. But Maeve Hollis saw none of it. She dragged herself through tangled mesquite, thorns tearing at her skin and fabric alike. Her wedding dress, once clean and bright as fresh linen, hung in shreds, soaked with dust and dried blood. Each crawl forward cost her breath. Her fingers were split and bleeding, scraping against unforgiving earth as she forced her body onward inch by inch. The rope burns around her wrists had split open again, darkening the torn sleeves with fresh stains. Pain rippled through her with every movement, radiating from her back, where Rourke Maddox and his brothers had taken turns teaching her the lesson they believed every disobedient wife deserved. The word burned into her flesh with heated iron, pulsed in time with her heart. Worthless. Her throat was raw with thirst, her lips were cracked, swollen, bleeding. She had lost track of how long she'd been out there. 2 days, maybe 3. Time had stopped mattering the moment they tossed her from the wagon like spoiled cargo, laughing as they rode off. "Let the coyotes finish her," one of them had said. "No one's going to miss a worthless woman." Maeve collapsed beside a jagged stone, its shadow offering the faintest mercy from the rising heat. Her body shook with soundless sobs. She had no tears left. The vultures had already found her, black shapes circling patiently since yesterday, waiting for what they believed was inevitable. She pressed her face into the dirt and prayed for it to end. She had tried. God knew she had tried to be a good wife. Tried to please the man her father had traded her to for 2 horses and a milk cow. Tried harder than she thought any human could endure. But nothing had ever been enough. Not her cooking. Not her silence. Not even her submission to things that hollowed her soul. "Please," she whispered to the empty sky, her voice no more than a rasp. "Please, just let it end." The sound of hoofbeats froze her blood. They had come back. Her husband had decided leaving her to die wasn't punishment enough. Terror flooded her veins, lending her a strength she didn't know she still possessed. She forced herself deeper into the mesquite, ignoring the way branches ripped at her skin and the remnants of her dress. But something was wrong. The rhythm of the approaching horse was different, lighter, smoother, not the heavy, careless pounding of the Maddox horses. Through her swollen eyes, Maeve caught sight of a rider moving across the prairie with effortless balance, as if he belonged to the land beneath him. Not the stiff posture of a white man. Skyle had been tracking the missing mare since before first light. The pregnant horse had slipped free from the temporary corral 2 nights earlier, and he could not afford to lose her. Not with his sister's children depending on the small herd he kept. The trail led him through familiar ground, past limestone ridges where hawks nested, down into low valleys where rain-fed grass grew thick and sweet. He nearly passed it, the flash of white tangled in brown thorns. At first he thought it was cloth torn from a settler's wagon. Then he saw movement. His hand slid to the knife at his belt as he guided his paint horse closer. What he found made him rein in sharply, his mount shifting beneath him in uneasy steps. A woman. A white woman. She lay folded in the brush like something discarded, broken. What remained of her dress told a story no words could soften. Rope scars circled her wrists. Bruises darkened her arms. And the way she tried to shrink further into herself as he approached spoke louder than any scream. Skyle had seen cruelty in his 28 years. He recognized its aftermath instantly. He dismounted slowly, keeping every movement measured, unthreatening. One of her eyes was swollen shut, the other fixed on him with the raw terror of a trapped animal. Her lips moved. Only a whisper escaped. "Please, make it quick. I don't deserve to live anyway." She spoke in English, a language Skyle understood well enough after years of trading and cautious diplomacy with nearby settlements. But it wasn't the words that struck him hardest. It was the surrender in her voice. He had heard that sound before, in his younger sister's voice, as sickness carried her away despite every remedy their people tried. "I won't hurt you," he said quietly in English, lowering himself into a crouch but keeping his distance. She flinched at the sound of his voice, her lips moving again. Prayer or plea, he couldn't tell. Up close, the damage was unmistakable. This wasn't the chaos of raiders or bandits. This was deliberate, personal, the kind of violence inflicted by those who believed another human being was theirs to own. Skyle's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "You need water. Medicine." He reached for the water skin at his belt, moving slowly so she could see every motion. "I can help." Maeve's fever-clouded thoughts struggled to grasp what was unfolding before her. The man standing nearby wore buckskin leggings and a simple cloth shirt, his long black hair pulled back with a narrow band of beads. An Apache warrior. She had heard enough frightening tales to recognize one instantly, yet there was nothing savage in his voice, nothing feral in the way he moved. His tone was calm, measured. His dark eyes rested on her with something dangerously close to concern. The look reminded her, absurdly, of her grandfather. Steady, patient, a gaze that saw pain without turning away. When he extended the water skin toward her, she didn't resist. The instinct to survive, small but stubborn, the same spark that had kept her crawling when death felt easier, flared again. Maeve reached out with trembling hands, her fingers barely managing to close around the worn leather. The water was warm, clean. It burned her ruined throat, and she broke into a ragged sob as she swallowed. "Slow," the warrior said quietly. "Too much will make you sick." She wanted to drink until there was nothing left, but after a few swallows he gently eased it from her grip. That single act of restraint shattered her composure. When was the last time anyone had treated her with care? Not her father, who had traded her like livestock. Not her husband, who had viewed her as something to break and reshape. Not his brothers, who had held her down while— "Kill me," Maeve whispered, lifting her eyes to his. "Please, I know what I am now, what they made me. Just make it quick." Skyle studied the woman before him, the damage carved into her body and spirit alike. He could leave her. That would be safer. His people had worked for years to keep fragile peace with nearby settlements. Bringing a white woman into their camp could shatter that balance overnight. But leaving her here would be no different than ending her life himself. And despite what the whites believed, Skyle was not a man who turned away from the helpless. "What is your name?" he asked instead. She blinked, disoriented by the question. "Maeve Hollis," she said faintly. "Or I don't know what I am anymore." "You are alive," Skyle replied simply. "That is enough for today." The decision settled in him then, heavy, unavoidable. His grandmother had taught him that the spirits tested people through the suffering of others. How a man answered another's pain revealed the truth of his heart. And his heart, scarred by loss, still recognized a soul that should not be abandoned. "Can you ride?" he asked, already knowing the answer. When she shook her head weakly, he nodded. "I will carry you. My camp is close. There are women there, Red Mesa women, who know healing," he continued. "They will help. Why?" Maeve's voice cracked on the word. "Why would you?" Skyle paused, his gaze drifting across the prairie as the mist thinned beneath the rising sun. "Because someone should," he said at last. "Because you asked for death, but your spirit is still fighting to live." Then he met her eyes. "And because I know what it is to lose everything and still have to breathe." He lifted her carefully, mindful of the wounds across her back. Maeve felt something stir inside her. Something she hadn't felt in so long she barely recognized it. Not hope. She was too broken for that. But the possibility of it. Like the first green shoot breaking through scorched earth after fire. The paint horse stood steady as Skyle settled her in front of him, his arms firm, unyielding. Maeve leaned back against his chest, too exhausted to keep fearing. Whatever waited ahead had to be better than dying alone among thorns. Worthless, forgotten. As they rode toward the Apache camp, the sun climbed higher, washing the land in gold and green. Behind them, Maeve's tracks in the dust faded beneath the wind, as though the crawling, broken creature had never existed at all. And perhaps, she thought dimly, that was for the best. Perhaps she could become someone else, someone not defined by the word burned into her flesh, someone who deserved the unexpected mercy of a stranger. The last thing she remembered before darkness took her was the steady rhythm of the horse's gait and Skyle's voice, low and melodic, singing in a language she didn't understand, but didn't need to. It was a traveling song, meant to guide the living and keep harm at bay. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Maeve Hollis felt protected. She drifted in and out of consciousness as the prairie passed beneath them. When the sun reached its peak, new sounds reached her ears, not harsh laughter or cruelty, but women's voices, flowing like water over stone. Children laughed, dogs barked, life moved around her, her eyes fluttered open. Ahead stood a ring of Buffalo High lodges, smoke curling from cooking fires. The scent of food reached her, sharp enough to make her stomach twist with hunger. Maeve swallowed, realizing with distant wonder that she had not reached death after all. She had reached people. People had already noticed their arrival. Women paused mid-task, hands stilled over hides and baskets. Children peeked out from behind their mothers' skirts, eyes wide with curiosity and caution. A few Red Mesa riders stood alert at the edges of the camp, watchful, but with no weapons raised. "Do not be afraid," Skyle said quietly as he slowed the horse. "My people will not harm you." But fear was the only language Maeve Hollis still understood. Her body tightened as more faces turned toward her. She heard murmurs ripple through the gathering, some in English, others in the flowing cadence of the Apache tongue. She caught pieces of it. A white woman. "She's injured. Why bring her here?" A few of the Red Mesa women clicked their tongues. Whether in disapproval of Maeve's presence or alarm at her condition, she could not tell. From one of the larger lodges, an elderly woman stepped forward with measured dignity. Her gray hair was braided with beads and feathers, her face carved by years and seasons. She spoke sharply to Skyle in Apache, her gestures quick and pointed toward Maeve. "My grandmother," Skal explained as he dismounted, keeping an arm firm around Maeve's unsteady form. "She is our healer. She asks why I bring trouble into our camp." "I'm sorry," Maeve whispered, shame flooding her chest. "I didn't mean to be a burden. I never wanted to cause—" "Hush!" the old woman snapped, switching to English. Her voice was stern, but not cruel. She stepped closer, eyes sharp, taking in every bruise, every burn, every tremor Maeve tried and failed to hide. What she saw darkened her expression. "Men did this," the healer said. "White men." It wasn't a question. Maeve nodded faintly, unable to lift her eyes. "Ishara," Skyle said her name softly. The old woman spat into the dust, muttered under her breath, then began issuing brisk commands in Apache. Younger women moved immediately, their earlier caution melting into something closer to concern. "Take her to the healing lodge," Ishara ordered, gently. "Can you not see how she suffers?" Strong but careful hands guided Maeve down from the horse. Her legs folded beneath her instantly, and she would have collapsed if two women had not caught her. One of them, a young mother with a baby secured against her back, made a low, soothing sound when she saw the raw rope burns on Maeve's wrists. "Come, sister," the woman said in accented English. "We help you now." Sister? The word nearly shattered what little composure Maeve had left. These women, whose people had every reason to despise hers, were offering her more mercy than her own husband ever had. The healing lodge stood slightly apart from the others, smaller, quieter. Inside, the air was thick with sage, sweet grass, and unfamiliar herbs. Clean hides lined the space, and they eased Maeve onto a bed of soft furs. Ishara examined her with hands both gentle and precise. "The dress must be removed," the healer said. "It is filthy. It will worsen the fever. You understand?" Maeve nodded, heat flooding her chest. She knew what they would see, what Rourke Maddox had done to mark her as property, to declare her value to the world. The women worked in silence, carefully cutting away the ruined wedding dress. Sharp breaths filled the lodge when her back was exposed. One of the younger women turned away, tears shining in her eyes. Ishara did not. "These marks," the healer said quietly, tracing the air above the burned word without touching it. "This is not chaos. This is ownership. Like cattle." "That's all I was," Maeve whispered into the furs. "Something he bought, something to use and discard." Ishara was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice heavy with memory. "My daughter was taken by Greycoat Dragoons when she was 14 summers. When we found her, she carried wounds like these." Maeve held her breath. "She lived," Ishara continued. "She healed. She laughed again, before the spotted sickness claimed her." The old woman rested her hand lightly on Maeve's shoulder. "You are not worthless, child. You are wounded. There is a difference." Warm water steeped with herbs washed over her skin. Every touch was careful, respectful. Maeve had forgotten that hands could be gentle, that being touched did not always mean pain. One woman combed the knots from her hair. Another spread a cooling sap over the burns on her back. "This will ease the pain," Ishara said, the salve smelling of pine and mint. "But healing the body is only part. The spirit must be tended as well." As they worked, Maeve sensed someone at the lodge entrance. Skyle stood there, not crossing the threshold. Men were not permitted inside. He watched in silence, his expression unreadable. "I should thank you," Maeve called weakly, "for saving me, even though I don't understand why." Skyle remained still for a moment, weighing his words. 3 winters ago, Skyle said quietly. My sister stumbled into a white settlement burning with fever. They could have helped her. His voice stayed steady, but something hard lived beneath it. Instead, they drove her away with stones, called her savage, said she would bring sickness to their children. She died on the trail back to our camp. His dark eyes lifted to Maeve Hollis. I could not save her, he continued, but I could save you. Perhaps that is how I answer the spirits. Maeve swallowed. Your people must hate me, she said softly, for what my kind has done. Some do, Skyle admitted, but hate is like holding fire in your hands. It burns the one who grips it the longest. My grandmother taught me that. Ishara nodded once, approval flickering across her lined face. Wise boy, she said. Now go. This is women's work. She turned sharply toward the others. Send Little Crow's wife. She will know what we need. Scale inclined his head and stepped away. When he was gone, the Red Mesa women resumed their work with quiet purpose. They dressed Maeve in a soft deerskin shift that felt like clouds against her battered skin. They fed her careful sips of a bitter tea that dulled the pain without stealing her senses. As they worked, they spoke among themselves in a gentle blend of Apache and English, including Maeve as naturally as if she had always belonged among them. Your husband, one woman asked cautiously. He will come looking. Maeve shook her head. He believes I'm dead. He wanted me that way. 4. She let out a hollow breath. He got what he paid for. 2 horses and a milk cow's worth of use from me. He won't waste time searching for damaged goods. The woman who had called her sister earlier, Naira, made a sharp sound of disgust. 2 horses and a cow, she said. That is what they think a woman is worth. A good woman might be worth more, Maeve replied bitterly. But I wasn't good enough, never good enough. Her voice trembled. I couldn't cook the way his mother did, couldn't keep the house the way he wanted. Couldn't. She stopped. The rest lodged too deep to speak. Listen, Ishara said firmly, settling beside her pallet. I tell you something now. You will remember it. She fixed Maeve with an unyielding gaze. A woman's worth is not measured by how well she serves a man, not by her cooking, not by her cleaning, not by her silence when his hand is raised. She touched her own chest. A woman's worth lives in her spirit, her courage, her kindness. These things no man can take. They can wound your body, child, Ishara continued, but your spirit, that belongs only to you. Then why do I feel so broken? Maeve whispered. Because you were treated as an object, Ishara replied. Not a person, because someone you should have trusted used that trust to harm you. She paused. That breaks something inside, yes, but broken things can be mended. Sometimes they return stronger. As the afternoon passed, Maeve felt herself slowly unclench, the women's low voices, a baby's occasional fussing, the steady sounds of camp life beyond the lodge. All of it felt unreal after what she had endured. When was the last time she had been among women without fear? Even before her marriage, her father had kept her isolated, preparing her to be silent, obedient, sellable. You will stay with us while you heal, Naira announced, as if the matter were already settled. My lodge has space. My husband is away hunting. My children enjoy new stories. I can't, Maeve protested weakly. I've brought enough trouble already. When they discover you're hiding me— Who will discover it? Naira asked shrewdly. The white settlements are 2 days' ride from here. We are at peace with them, she added, but we do not invite them for tea. She softened her tone. You rest. You heal. Then you decide what comes next. For now, you are safe. Safe. The word felt strange on Maeve's tongue. She had never been safe in her father's house, where she was merchandise. She had never been safe in her husband's house, where she was property. Yet here, among people she had been taught to fear, she felt the first fragile stirrings of something that might truly be safety. As evening settled, the women guided her toward Naira's lodge. Children peeked at her with open curiosity, not cruelty, just wonder at the strange white woman with the wounded back. One little girl stepped forward. No more than 5 summers old, the little girl approached with careful steps and placed a small corn husk doll into Maeve Hollis's hands. "For you," she said shyly in English, "so you not be lonely." Maeve clutched the simple doll and broke down. Not from pain this time, but from the sheer weight of kindness. These people owed her nothing. They had every reason to turn her away. Instead, they had fed her, clothed her, sheltered her, and called her sister as she lay that night on soft furs inside Naira's lodge. She listened to the quiet breathing of the family around her, to the distant pulse of drums drifting through the camp. In the darkness, Maeve whispered, "Please, make it quick. I'm not worth saving." Yet even as the words left her mouth, she knew they were losing their truth. Tomorrow, Ishara would tend her wounds again. Naira would share her morning meal. The children would come asking for stories she didn't know how to tell. And somewhere beyond the firelight, an Apache warrior who had chosen compassion over indifference would move through his day, unaware that a single decision had altered the course of her life. For the first time in years, Maeve fell asleep without fearing what morning would bring. Over the following week, the healing lodge became her refuge. Each dawn, Ishara arrived with her medicines and steady hands, treating the wounds along Maeve's back with endless patience. The burned word had begun to scab, though the healer warned it would leave a permanent mark. "Some scars stay with us," Ishara said one morning, spreading fresh salve over the healing skin. "They become part of our story." She met Maeve's eyes. "But they do not decide how the story ends." Maeve grew stronger. Soon she could sit without help, then walk short distances through the camp with Naira's support. The Red Mesa. Women accepted her presence in different ways. Some still watched her cautiously. Others brought small gifts of food or beadwork to lift her spirits. The children, however, had no reservations. They trailed after her like curious pups, fascinated by her pale skin and amused by the few Apache words she was learning. It was during one of these walks that Maeve truly noticed Skyle again. He worked nearby with several men, preparing hides for trade. His movements were efficient, practiced, and she found herself watching the ease of his laughter, the quiet respect the other Red Mesa riders showed him. "He is a good man," Naira said softly, catching Maeve's gaze. "He lost his wife 2 winters ago to the spotted sickness. No children. Many families have tried to match him with their daughters. He has shown no interest." Heat rose to Maeve's cheeks. I was just..." Naira laughed, warm and unmocking. "You are a woman with eyes. He is a man worth looking at. There is no shame in that." But shame was all Maeve had ever known where men and desire were concerned. Her husband had made certain of that, twisting what should have been natural into something cruel and painful. She turned away, focusing instead on the children playing nearby. That evening, as the camp settled into its familiar rhythms, Maeve sat outside Naira's lodge, working on beadwork the women had begun teaching her. Her fingers were clumsy, but the repetitive motion soothed her. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of smoke and prairie grass. "Your hands are healing well?" Maeve looked up to see Skyle standing nearby, keeping a respectful distance in the firelight. His features seemed softer there, younger than his 28 years. Thanks to your grandmother, Maeve said, setting the beadwork aside. And to you. I never truly thanked you for saving my life. You thanked me by surviving, Skyle replied simply. That is enough. Silence followed, but it was not uncomfortable. Maeve had learned that among these people, silence did not need filling. Sometimes it carried more meaning than words. May I sit? Skyle asked at last, gesturing to a spot several feet away. When she nodded, he settled cross-legged on the ground, his gaze lifting toward the stars. My grandmother says you are healing quickly, he said. Not only your body. She has been very kind, Maeve answered. Everyone has. Kinder than I deserve. Skyle turned to her then, his expression serious. Why do you speak of yourself this way? As if kindness must be earned rather than freely given? Maeve twisted her fingers in her lap. How could she explain a lifetime of being told she was worth only what she provided? My father used to say, a woman's value was in her usefulness, she said quietly. My husband believed the same. When I failed to be useful enough, he made sure I understood my worth. Your father was wrong, Skyle said. Your husband was wrong. There was restrained anger in his voice, but none of it was aimed at her. Among my people, we say a person's worth is not found in what they do, but in who they are. You are more than the sum of your usefulness to others. Maeve's breath caught. Then what am I? She asked. The question escaped more desperate than she intended. I don't know how to be anything else, Maeve Hollis said quietly. I was raised to become a wife, trained to serve, and I failed even at that. Skyle did not answer at once. He watched the fire for a long moment, weighing his words. When I found you, he said at last, you were dying. Everything had been stripped from you. Your dignity, your hope, even your will to live. He turned to face her. And yet here you are, learning our ways, making children laugh, bringing my grandmother peace through your determination to heal. He paused. Is that not its own kind of strength? Tears stung Maeve's eyes. Your grandmother says similar things, she whispered. But it's hard to believe. She gestured helplessly toward her back, where the branded word still throbbed beneath the cloth. May I tell you something? Skyle asked. When she nodded, he continued. When I was 15 summers, soldiers captured me. They held me for 3 months, trying to civilize me. His jaw tightened. They cut my hair, burned my clothing, beat me whenever I spoke our language. Every day they told me I was savage, worthless, less than human. Maeve barely breathed. When I escaped and returned home, Skyle went on, I believed them. It took many seasons to remember who I truly was. How? Maeve whispered. How did you remember? By living, he answered simply. By choosing each day to be more than what they said I was. By letting my people remind me of my true name when I had forgotten it. He hesitated, then spoke more softly. You have forgotten your true name as well. Maeve Hollis. But it is still there, waiting for you to remember it. Before she could respond, raised voices rippled through the camp. Several Red Mesa riders had returned from scouting. Their expressions were grim. Skyle rose immediately, moving toward them. Maeve heard rapid Apache spoken in low, urgent tones. She saw the tension in their gestures. Naira appeared beside her. Inside, she said quickly. Now. What is it? Maeve asked. What's wrong? White men, Naira said, her voice tight. Approaching from the east, a search party. Cold flooded Maeve's veins. They had come for her. Somehow, impossibly, Rourke Maddox had learned she was alive, or perhaps he simply wanted proof of her death. To see her body with his own eyes. Inside the lodge, Naira's children huddled close, sensing the fear in the air. Maeve's hands trembled as she helped bank the fire, understanding without words that they were preparing to flee if needed. "How many?" Maeve asked. "8. Maybe 10. They'll reach us by dawn." 8 men, her husband, his brothers, Caleb Maddox and Dane Maddox, and likely a few of their drinking companions. Enough to bring real danger if they accused the Apache of hiding her. Her presence could shatter the fragile peace, could bring violence to people who had shown her nothing but mercy. "I should go," Maeve said suddenly. "If I leave now, go back to them. Tell them I got lost. Maybe—" "No." Naira's voice was firm. "You think we give you back to men who did this?" She gestured to Maeve's still healing back. "Never." "The treaty says nothing about returning tortured women to their tormentors," Ishara snapped, entering the lodge with surprising speed for her age. "You are under our protection now." Her eyes burned with authority. "This is sacred law, older than any treaty." Moments later, Skyle ducked inside. His face was set with resolve. "They made camp 5 miles east," he said. "At first light, our chiefs will meet them. We will learn what they want." He met Maeve's gaze. "You stay hidden until then." "They want me," Maeve said miserably. "I'm nothing but trouble for all of you." "You are not nothing," Skyle said sharply, "and we do not abandon those under our protection. My grandmother has claimed you as her patient. By our law, that makes you family until you are healed." He looked to Ishara. She nodded once. "Would you have us break sacred law for men who break their own vows?" Skyle continued. The mention of vows made Maeve flinch. "He didn't break them," she murmured. "A husband has rights." "A husband has responsibilities," Ishara corrected calmly. "To protect, to provide, to cherish." She studied Maeve's face. "Did this man do any of these things?" Maeve could not answer. The word burned into her flesh, answered for her. The night passed in tense silence. Red Mesa riders took turns standing watch, while women prepared supplies in case swift movement became necessary. Maeve did not sleep. As dawn crept closer, painting the eastern sky in pale gold and rose, she made a decision. She would not let these people bleed for her sake. She rose quietly, meaning to slip away before the meeting, meaning to give herself up and spare them the cost of protecting her. But when she lifted the lodge flap, she found Scale seated just outside, as if he had known exactly what she intended. "Running toward death is still running," Skyle said quietly, "and we do not let family run alone." "I'm not your family," Maeve Hollis protested weakly. Skyle shook his head. "Then tell me why my grandmother prepares medicine for you every morning, why our children bring you gifts, why the Red Mesa women teach you our ways." He stepped into her path, not threatening, only firm. "Family is more than blood," he said. "Sometimes it is choice. We have chosen." His eyes held hers. "The question is, will you choose us in return?" Before Maeve could answer, the distant sound of hooves cut through the morning air. They both turned. The mist lifted slowly, revealing riders advancing from the east. And at their head, Maeve saw the face that haunted her sleep. Rourke Maddox sat tall in his saddle, scanning the camp with cold ownership, his mouth set in that familiar, cruel line. "Stay behind me," Skyle murmured. "Remember, you are not nothing. You are not worthless." He did not look at her as he spoke. "You are chosen family, and we protect our own." Something shifted inside Maeve's chest. For the first time in her life, she stood among people who saw her as more than property, more than failure, more than the burned word carved into her flesh. Whatever came next, she would face it not as Rourke Maddox's discarded wife, but as Maeve, patient of Ishara, friend of Naira, teacher to children who brought her dolls, and called her pale sister. She was afraid. But she was not afraid alone. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the Apache camp as Rourke Maddox and his men dismounted at the edge of Red Mesa land. Maeve watched from behind the lodge flap, heart pounding as she recognized each face: Caleb Maddox, Dane Maddox, and several townmen whose eyes had always lingered on her in ways that made her skin crawl. Tayon emerged from his lodge, flanked by several Red Mesa riders, including Skyle. Despite his age, the chief carried himself with unshakable authority, one who had survived battles and treaties alike. "You are welcome on our land," Tayon said calmly in English. "What brings you here?" Rourke stepped forward, resting his hand casually on his gun belt. Maeve knew that posture. Relaxed. Ready. "We're looking for something that belongs to me," Rourke said. "My property." "We are not thieves," Tayon replied evenly. "What property do you claim?" "My wife." The words echoed across the camp. Maeve gripped the lodge pole to keep from collapsing. "She ran off a week ago," Rourke continued. "Ungrateful thing. Trail led this way before it vanished." His gaze swept the camp. "Word is your people might have seen her." "A woman is not property," Skyle said sharply, stepping forward despite Tayon's raised hand. "She is a person." Rourke's blue eyes locked onto Skyle. His lip curled into that familiar smile, the one that always came before pain. "I don't recall asking a savage for his opinion," Rourke sneered. "I paid for that woman." He spat to the side. "2 horses and a milk cow to her drunk father. Makes her mine by law." "Your law," Tayon said calmly. "Not ours." The tension thickened. Caleb Maddox spat tobacco into the dirt. "Listen, Chief. We know you got her. Mrs. Henderson saw one of your women trading at the fort. Mentioned a white woman here." He shrugged. "We can handle this peaceful. Or not." Skyle's hand drifted toward his knife. "You threaten us on our own land?" he said coldly. "Enough," Tayon commanded, raising his hand. "We have seen no white woman wandering our lands," the chief said. "If your wife left you, perhaps you should ask yourself why, instead of chasing shadows." Rourke's face darkened. "She didn't leave," he snapped. "She's too stupid and worthless to survive alone. Someone took her, and I want her back." His voice hardened. "She needs to be taught her place." Inside the lodge, Maeve pressed her fist to her mouth to stifle a sob. Naira's arm wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Rourke spread his hands, adopting a false calm that made Maeve's skin crawl. "I'm a patient man," he said. "Just send her out. No trouble." He smirked. "I'll even throw in a couple bottles of whiskey." "We do not trade in women," Tayon replied. "Or whiskey. I say again, we have not seen your wife." Dane Maddox stepped forward, younger and crueler than his brothers. "Then maybe we search the camp ourselves." The Red Mesa riders shifted. Hands moved toward weapons. The morning air cracked with the promise of blood. And that was when Maeve Hollis made her choice. She could not allow blood to be spilled because of her. These people had given her more mercy than her own blood ever had. She would not repay that kindness with death. Maeve pulled free from Naira's hands and stepped out of the lodge. "Rourke," her voice carried across the camp. Every head turned. She caught Skyle's expression tighten, something between concern and quiet dread. From the healing lodge, Ishara emerged, her aged face set in lines of warning. Rourke's reaction shifted quickly. Surprise, satisfaction, then the familiar cold fury. "There you are," he barked. "Come here, now." Maeve took one step forward. Then she stopped. She felt it then, the strength around her. Scale's steady presence, Ishira's fierce protection, Naira's quiet, sisterly courage. They gave her something she had never owned before. No. The word landed in the morning air like a stone dropped into still water. Rourke flushed red. What did you say? I said no. Maeve's voice steadied. I'm not coming with you. I'm not your property anymore. The hell you aren't! Rourke lunged forward and stopped short as Skyle stepped directly into his path. Move, savage, Rourke snarled. The woman has spoken, Skyle replied calmly. She does not wish to go with you. She doesn't get a choice. I own her. You own nothing here, Taeon said, his voice firm. She has claimed sanctuary among us. By our law, the chief continued, she is under our protection. Rourke's hand dropped to his gun. Your laws don't mean a damn thing to me. Before he could draw, Maeve stepped around Skyle. Her chin lifted, though her body trembled. You want to know why I left? She said. You want the truth? You left because you're worthless, Rourke snapped. I left because you tried to kill me. The words burst free. Years of silence shattered at once. You and your brothers beat me, burned me, cut your hatred into my skin. You left me to die in the desert. She needed correction, Caleb Maddox muttered, but some of the men shifted uncomfortably. A wife needs to know her place. My place? Maeve laughed, a broken, hollow sound. My place was never to be your wife. She looked Rourke straight in the eye. It was to be your victim. Shut your mouth, Rourke snapped. You're humiliating yourself. No. Maeve pulled down the collar of her dress, revealing the bruises still shadowing her throat. You humiliated me. Every day, every night. Her voice hardened. And I'm done being afraid. She turned to Taeon. I formally ask for protection among your people. I have nowhere else to go, but I will not return to him. I would rather die. The chief studied her in silence. Then he nodded. It is granted. You may remain among us for as long as you choose. Rourke exploded. You can't do this. She's mine. I paid for her. Then consider your payment lost, Ishira said sharply, stepping forward. You lost your honor the moment you raised your hand against someone weaker than you. Only cowards do that. Watch your tongue, old woman, Dane Maddox warned. Skyle moved faster than Maeve could see. In an instant, Dane was on the ground, Skyle's knife pressed to his throat. You do not threaten our grandmother, Skyle said quietly. Ever. Enough, Taeon commanded. Skyle withdrew. Take your men and leave, Rourke Maddox, the chief said. Your wife has made her choice. Honor it, or leave in peace. This isn't over, Rourke hissed. His eyes burned into Maeve. You're my wife before God and law. Watch me choose otherwise, Maeve said, her voice steel calm. For a breath, violence hovered in the air like smoke. Then a man stepped forward. Maeve recognized Harlan Beck, the storekeeper. Come on, Rourke, he muttered. She ain't worth starting a war over. Another man nodded. She's right anyway, about what you did. We all knew. Maybe it's best to let her go. Rourke looked at his men, saw the shift. Without them, he was outnumbered, and for the first time, he had lost control. Rourke's jaw clenched hard, grinding with rage. For a moment, it looked like he might draw anyway. Then he stepped back. Fine, he spat. Keep the useless woman. His eyes cut toward Maeve, sharp as broken glass. But when she shows her true nature, when she brings ruin to your people like she did to mine, remember I warned you. He leaned closer in his saddle, his voice low and venomous. This isn't finished, woman. Not even close. The white men swung onto their horses and rode out, dust rising behind them. Maeve knew the threat was real. Rourke would return, with more men, with the law, or with some other cruelty shaped like justice. The moment they vanished beyond the ridge, her strength vanished too. Her knees buckled. Skyle caught her before she fell, his arms firm and steady. "You stood like a warrior," he said quietly. "I don't feel brave," Maeve whispered. "I feel terrified." Taeon approached, his voice calm but sure. "Courage is not the absence of fear," the chief said. "It is choosing to stand even when fear is heavy. Today, you chose." Ishara clicked her tongue sharply. "Enough words. The girl needs rest and medicine. Fear like that taxes the body." As the tension eased, Maeve realized she was surrounded, not threatened, but supported. The Red Mesa women stood close, their earlier caution replaced with something else. Respect. Naira squeezed Maeve's hand. "You spoke truth to power," she said softly. "That is sacred." She smiled. "Now you are truly our sister." That evening, as the fire crackled outside Naira's lodge, Skyle approached carrying a small leather bundle. "This is for you," he said, offering it gently. "A medicine pouch, for strength and protection." Maeve accepted it with shaking hands. "I don't deserve—" "Stop," he said quietly but firmly. "Stop measuring yourself by suffering. You faced the man who tried to destroy you. You chose freedom over fear. You chose us." His gaze held hers. "That makes you worthy of all good things." "He'll come back," Maeve said. "I've brought danger to your people." Skyle nodded once. "We have faced danger before. We will again. But we do not abandon family to wolves, no matter how loud they howl." Maeve pressed the medicine pouch to her chest, its weight grounding her. For the first time in her life, she had said no. She had been believed. She had been protected. The word burned into her back, still lingered, but it no longer owned her. She was Maeve, a survivor, a woman learning how to stand. The days that followed settled into a rhythm she had never known. Peaceful, purposeful, unafraid. Each morning brought lessons. The Red Mesa women taught her to tan hides, Naira's hands moving with practiced grace until the stiff skin softened like cloth. Ishara guided her across the prairie, pointing out plants and their meanings. "This one lowers fever," Ishara said, kneeling beside violet blossoms. "Too much, and it stops the heart. Medicine and poison are often the same thing. Wisdom is knowing the difference." Maeve listened carefully, adding each plant to her basket. Her wounds faded to pale scars. The word remained, but it burned less now. The children claimed her completely, tugging at her sleeves each evening for stories. She had few happy ones from her past, so she learned theirs instead, stumbling over words, laughing as they corrected her. It was Skyle who taught her to ride properly, not side-saddle restraint, but balance and freedom. The first time she stayed mounted as the horse thundered across the prairie, laughter burst from her chest, pure and unrestrained. "You ride like the wind," Skyle said, easing his paint horse beside hers. "I've never felt anything like it," Maeve breathed. "It's like flying." "This," he said simply, "is freedom. Remember it." She did. Even on nights when dreams dragged her back to Rourke's house of pain, she would wake to the soft breathing of the lodge, the steady safety around her. And she would remember. She had chosen freedom, and freedom had chosen her back. One afternoon, while Maeve worked alongside the Red Mesa women, scraping hides for winter garments, a hunting party returned with news that froze her blood. The riders dismounted quickly, their faces tight with concern. "White soldiers," one of them reported. "Seen north of here, more than usual, asking questions?" Maeve's hands stilled against the stiff hide. "They're asking about a white woman," Kovar added, speaking to Taeon. They claim she was taken by force. Kidnapped. Of course, Rourke Maddox would say that. It was easier than admitting his wife had chosen freedom over him. They say her husband has offered a reward, Kovar continued. Maeve felt the weight of every eye around her. How much? Taeyeon asked evenly. $50, and promises of goodwill to any band that returns her. It was a fortune, enough to buy winter supplies, enough to mean survival for many. Maeve looked at the people around her, the hands that had fed her, healed her, protected her, and wondered if need might outweigh compassion. Taeyeon considered the fire for a long moment, then spat into the dirt. Not enough to buy our honor, he said. The woman stays. Relief flooded Maeve's chest, followed immediately by guilt. I could leave, she offered quietly. Go somewhere else. I don't have to bring this danger to you. And where would you go? Ishra asked calmly. Back to the settlements poisoned by your husband's lies? To another band that might trade you for supplies? She shook her head. No, child. You remain where you are valued for more than the price on your head. That evening, Skyle found Maeve sitting alone by the stream near camp, watching the sunset stain the water in gold and red. She wiped at her face when she heard him approach. May I? He asked, nodding toward the ground beside her. When she agreed, he sat at a respectful distance, following her gaze across the water. I'm ruining your peace, Maeve said at last. Everything you've built with the settlements, I undermine it just by being here. Peace built on lies is no peace at all, Skyle replied. If our neighbors would break treaty over one woman's freedom, then the treaty was already broken. He skipped a smooth stone across the water. Winter is coming. That $50 would taste bitter, knowing how it was earned. Another stone flew. My people have survived many winters without blood money. We'll survive this one too. Maeve watched the ripples spread. Why do you care so much? She asked. About me. I'm not special, just broken. Trouble follows me. Skyle was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When I was young, 7 summers maybe, I found a hawk with a shattered wing, he said finally. The other boys said to leave it, said it was useless, but my grandmother helped me care for it. He turned a stone in his palm. We fed it, protected it, set the wing. After many weeks it flew again, not far at first, but one day it soared higher than before, as if breaking had taught it something new about the sky. What happened to it? Maeve asked softly. One morning it was gone, he said, returned to its life. Sometimes I still see hawks circling and wonder if one of them is mine, free because someone believed it could heal. Tears slid down Maeve's cheeks. I'm not a hawk, she whispered. I'm damaged. That word on my back. It is a lie, Skyle interrupted gently. Written by a liar. It holds only the power you give it. Easy for you to say, she replied. You don't carry marks of ownership like cattle. Skyle shifted, pulling aside his shirt. There, on his shoulder, were scars Maeve had noticed before, burned deliberately into flesh. Not words, but numbers. The soldiers who took me, he said quietly. For 3 months, I wasn't Skyle. I was 47. Maeve reached out instinctively, then stopped. May I? He nodded. She traced the air above the scars without touching. How do you live with it? She asked. The reminder? By choosing who I became after, he answered. The marks remain, but I am Skyle. Warrior, hunter, protector. The boy who was 47 died. I was born from his ashes. He let the shirt fall back into place. You can choose too. Maeve, the woman called worthless, can die if you allow her. I don't know how to be anyone else. Then learn, he said. As you learned to ride, to work hides, to speak our words. Identity isn't stone. It's water, always moving, always becoming. They sat in silence as darkness settled and the first stars emerged. Something shifted inside Maeve, like ice breaking loose in a frozen river. For so long she had believed the story carved into her skin. Now she knew stories could be rewritten. "Teach me," she said suddenly, "to be strong, to fight, to never be helpless again." Skyle studied her in the moonlight. "Fighting begins here," he said, touching his temple. "And here." His hand rested over his heart. "The body follows the spirit." "Then teach my spirit first," Maeve said, "and when it's strong enough, teach my body too." "You are stronger than you know," he replied. "And yes, I will teach you if my grandmother allows." As dawn approached, the path ahead quietly began to change. Maeve stood before the council of elder women, her request spoken clearly despite the weight of so many eyes upon her. She had expected resistance. Fighting, after all, was rarely spoken of as a woman's path. But to her surprise, Ishira only studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Once," the old healer said, "every woman among us knew how to defend herself. When the men were gone hunting, who do you think guarded the camps?" She let the words settle. These quieter years have made us forget. But forgetting is not the same as losing. The knowledge still lives. If you wish to learn, we will remember together. And so Maeve's lessons widened. Her mornings remained devoted to the work that sustained the band. Preparing hides, gathering firewood, learning the rhythm of shared labor among the Red Mesa women. But in the evenings, she joined a small group near the edge of camp, where Skyle and several younger Red Mesa riders taught her the fundamentals of survival. How to hold a knife without hesitation. How to turn an attacker's strength against him, where a larger opponent was most vulnerable. "You are not training for a fair fight," Skyle told her, correcting her grip on a practice blade. "Fair fights belong to people with choices. You are learning how to live." Maeve threw herself into the training with a focus that surprised everyone, herself most of all. Every movement she mastered felt like reclaiming something stolen. The woman who had crawled through the desert begging for death no longer existed. In her place stood someone new. Still Maeve, but reshaped. One evening, after a grueling session, Naira found her rubbing salve into bruised knuckles. "You push yourself hard," Naira said gently. "Like you're striking at shadows?" "Maybe I am," Maeve admitted. "Every blow feels like it's meant for every voice that ever told me I was weak. Worthless, my father, my husband, even the one inside my own head." Naira nodded, understanding. "This is good," she said. "But remember, strength is not only in the fist. It is also in healing, in choosing trust, in staying open even when pain teaches you to close. You show that strength every day." As autumn deepened toward winter, Maeve felt herself changing with the season. Not fading, but becoming. The word burned into her back remained, but it was only a scar now. No more defining than the marks on her hands from hide work, or the calluses earned from holding reins. She was no longer Rourke Maddox's broken wife. She was Maeve of the Red Mesa, student of healing and defense, sister to Naira, adopted granddaughter of Ishira. And though she barely dared to name it, something more, someone, Skyle, who saw not her scars, but her resolve. Winter arrived with teeth and claws. Snow swallowed the prairie, reshaping the land into something strange and starkly beautiful. Maeve had never known cold like this. In her father's house, and later Rourke's, she had been kept indoors, barred from hardship. Here, life continued. She learned how to wrap buffalo robes properly, how to tend a fire so it burned steady without devouring fuel, how to read the signs of an approaching blizzard. It was during one such storm that she learned what family truly meant. The wind howled like a living thing, forcing snow through every weakness in the lodge walls. All work ceased as the band waited out the storm together. Inside Naira's lodge, stories and songs passed the time. Children curled between adults like pups seeking warmth. "Tell us about the horses, pale sister," Toma begged. Maeve smiled and told a story Skyle had taught her, how the Red Mesa people first came to ride, shaping the tale with gestures and cadence she had learned. Warmth filled her, deeper than the fire. On the third day of the storm, they heard it, a child's cry, faint beneath the wind. One of the younger boys had gone to check the horses just before the storm worsened and had not returned. Without hesitation, several Red Mesa riders prepared to search, Skyle among them. Maeve's chest tightened as she watched them rope together. "I'm coming," she said, reaching for her winter gear. "No," Skyle replied firmly. "This storm kills without warning." "I've been learning to track with Ishara," Maeve insisted. "I know how Toma thinks, where he might hide. I can help." They argued briefly until Teon made the decision. "She goes," the chief said. "More eyes mean better chances." The cold was merciless. It cut through every layer, freezing breath into crystals that clung to fur-lined hoods. They moved in a line, ropes binding them together, calling Toma's name into the white void. It was Maeve who spotted the dark shape first. Not the boy, but his favorite pony, standing half buried in snow. The horse led them to a small grove where Toma had tried to shelter. The child lay unconscious, lips blue with cold. "He's alive," Skyle said, lifting him carefully. "Barely." They returned to camp through sheer will. Ishara and the healers took over at once, warming the boy slowly, methodically. Maeve stayed beside him, holding his frozen hands, speaking constantly as she had been taught. "The spirit needs an anchor," Ishara had once said. "When the body weakens, a caring voice can guide it home." They worked through the night. By dawn, color returned to Toma's face, and Maeve, exhausted and shaking, finally understood. She was no longer someone waiting to be saved. She was part of the saving now. When Toma finally opened his eyes and whispered for water, a wave of relief swept through the lodge. Soft cheers broke out, quickly hushed by the healers. "You did well," Ishara told Maeve later, her voice low and certain. "You have the instincts of a healer. Perhaps this is the road meant for you." Maeve barely had time to absorb the praise. As the storm loosened its grip, scouts arrived with news that turned her blood to ice. "Greycoat Dragoons," one reported, camped less than 10 miles away, waiting for clear weather. "They fly a white flag," Kovar added. "They say they want to talk, not fight, but they carry many rifles." Teon called an immediate council. Maeve would not normally have been permitted inside, but the chief motioned her forward. "This concerns you," he said. "You will hear it." The discussion grew heated. Some urged moving camp at once, slipping away before contact could be made. Others argued for meeting the soldiers and denying any knowledge of Maeve's presence. A few younger Red Mesa riders spoke of fighting, but their elders silenced them quickly. "I will go to them," Maeve said quietly. "It's the only way." "No," Skyle's voice cut through the lodge. "We do not trade family for peace." "If her presence brings war, then war comes," Teon replied evenly. "But first, we speak. Perhaps these soldiers are men who listen." The next morning, a small delegation rode out. Maeve watched from the edge of camp, her stomach knotted tight. Ishara stood beside her, one weathered hand resting on Maeve's shoulder. "Whatever comes," the old woman said, "remember this. You chose freedom. That choice carries a price." "Yes," Maeve replied softly. But chains carry one too. By midday, the riders returned. Their commander will come, Taeon announced. A captain, Captain Reed Colton. He brings only 2 men. It was a hopeful sign, either courage or a genuine wish for peace. Captain Colton proved to be a seasoned man in his 40s, his gray eyes sharp but thoughtful. Unlike many soldiers Maeve had known, his gaze held curiosity rather than contempt. When he entered Taeon's lodge, his attention found Maeve at once. Mrs. Maddox, he said formally, your husband is deeply concerned for your welfare. He is no longer my husband, Maeve answered. Her voice did not waver. I left him. That isn't how the law sees it, Colton replied. You are legally married. He claims certain rights. Rights? Maeve rose and let her shawl slip back, revealing the scars on her arms. What about my rights, Captain? The right not to be beaten? The right not to be burned and carved like property? Something flickered in Colton's eyes, though his expression remained controlled. I've heard rumors about Rourke Maddox's temper, he admitted. But the law, your law, Taeon interrupted calmly, does not rule here. She claimed sanctuary. We granted it. Colton studied Maeve for a long moment. May I speak with her privately? He asked. At Taeon's nod, the others stepped outside. Skyle lingered until Maeve assured him she would be safe. When they were alone, the captain's posture softened. I have a daughter about your age, Colton said quietly. If a man treated her the way I suspect Maddox treated you, I would want him dead. But I am bound by orders. I understand, Maeve said, but you also have choices, just as I did. A faint smile touched his mouth. Yes, he said. I suppose I do. He sighed. Maddox has friends. He's pushing for military intervention if you aren't returned. He claims you were taken against your will. Maeve met his gaze evenly. Do I look like a prisoner? No, he admitted. You look free, happier than I suspect you've been in years. Then you know the truth. Truth and law don't always walk together, Colton said, but I will report that we found no sign of you here. Maeve exhaled slowly. But Maddox won't stop, Colton added. He'll hire trackers, ash spur men, anyone willing to chase coin. I know, Maeve said softly, but I will face whatever comes as a free woman. Colton studied her once more. Maddox bragged in town, he said, about the mark on your back. Said he burned it so everyone would know what you were. Maeve felt the old shame stir, then forced it down. He marked me so everyone would know what he is, she said. A man who needs pain to feel powerful. Well said, Colton replied. He turned to leave, then paused. There's a post about 100 miles west, Fort Defiance. The commander there is sympathetic to women in difficult circumstances. Maeve nodded. The captain stepped outside, leaving behind a fragile peace, and the certainty that the road ahead would not be easy. But it would be hers. His own sister had once escaped a violent husband. If things became impossible here, you might find people willing to help you there. Thank you, Maeve Hollis said softly, understanding the danger he took just by sharing that knowledge. Don't thank me, Captain Reed Colton replied. I was never here, and this conversation never happened. He offered her a brief, knowing smile. Take care of yourself, miss. Be cautious. After the Greycoat Dragoons departed, the camp burst into celebration. Songs rose, laughter followed, and relief spread like warmth through the lodges. Bloodshed had been avoided. Sanctuary remained unbroken. Yet Maeve could not fully join the joy. The captain's warning echoed in her thoughts. This isn't over. That night, while the camp danced and sang beneath the stars, Skyle found Maeve sitting alone beside the river, the same place where they had once spoken of hawks and healing. "You're troubled," he said, settling beside her. He was right, Maeve admitted quietly. "Rourke Maddox won't stop. He'll keep coming. He'll send others." "You think you endanger us," Skyle said. "I do." "Life itself is danger," he replied simply. "Each morning we wake, we accept risk. The question is not how to avoid it, but which risks are worth taking." Maeve swallowed. "Am I worth it?" The question came out smaller than she intended. Skyle turned fully toward her. "You saved Toma. You bring laughter back to our children. You remind the Red Mesa women of strength they once carried. You've shown us that courage can grow even in broken ground." He held her gaze. "Yes, Maeve. You are worth it, far more than you know." Something in her chest broke open. Without thinking, she leaned into him. His arms closed around her. Steady, protective, sure. They stayed that way as the celebration continued behind them. Two souls shaped by pain, finding quiet refuge in each other. "I'm learning how to live free," Maeve whispered against his chest. "But sometimes I'm still afraid. Freedom and fear often walk together," Skyle said, his voice deep and calm. "The bravest warriors feel fear most clearly. They simply choose courage anyway." As the stars turned overhead and songs drifted across the cold air, Maeve made another choice. She would stay. She would face whatever came, not as Rourke Maddox's broken wife, but as Maeve. A healer in training, a stormwalker, a friend to warriors and children alike. The scar on her back throbbed with phantom pain, but she breathed through it, remembering Ishura's teachings. Pain was only another teacher, another test. And Maeve was learning, slowly, steadily, how to endure. Spring arrived beneath a full, pale moon, turning new grass silver across the prairie. Maeve sat by the dying embers of the evening fire, working on a pair of moccasins she was decorating with beadwork. The skill still challenged her, but it filled her with a quiet pride. The camp slept, but rest would not come to her. Something restless stirred in her chest, a feeling she could not yet name. "You work late?" Skyle's voice came softly from the dark. He stepped into the firelight, carrying something wrapped in soft deerskin. "I couldn't sleep," Maeve admitted, setting her beadwork aside. "The moon's too bright, maybe." "Or your spirit is awake," he said, sitting across from her. "Some nights the heart speaks more clearly than the day allows." Over the winter, they had grown close. Training had turned into conversations, lessons into shared silences by the river. Futures, once unimaginable, had begun to take shape. "I have something for you," Skyle said, extending the bundle. "For the new season." Maeve unwrapped it carefully and gasped. Inside lay a necklace of turquoise beads, each one polished smooth, with a central pendant carved into the shape of a bird in flight. "Skyle, it's beautiful. I can't—" "You can," he interrupted gently. "It was my mother's." Maeve's hands trembled as she touched the stones. "She would have wanted it worn by someone who understands what it means to rise after suffering," he continued. "She called it sunrise after storm." He paused. "It reminded her that no darkness lasts forever." "Like Ishara's teaching," Maeve murmured, "that everything passes, pain and joy alike." "Yes," Skyle said. Then, quieter. "But some things, we hope will last longer than others." Their eyes met across the dying fire. Maeve's breath caught. She had learned to read the smallest shifts in his expression, and what she saw now made her heart race. "Maeve," he began, then stopped, looking away. "I should not speak. You've endured too much. You're still healing." She reached for his hand. "I am healing," she said, "but I am no longer broken." "My body is healed," Maeve Hollis said with quiet certainty, "and my spirit grows stronger with every sunrise." She met Skile's eyes. "Do not look at me as the shattered woman you pulled from the thorns. That woman no longer exists." "I don't see you that way," Skyle answered at once. Then he hesitated, searching for words. "In my dreams, I see you as the sunrise itself, the light that follows the longest night." Maeve's eyes filled, but these tears carried no sorrow. No one had ever spoken of her with such reverence. Rourke Maddox had seen her as property, her father as an exchange of value, but Skyle saw something sacred. She moved closer, settling beside him near the fire, close enough to feel his warmth. "I dream too," she admitted softly. "Dreams where I'm no longer afraid, where trust doesn't wait for pain to follow. And in those dreams, you are always there." Skyle's hand found hers, his calloused fingers gentle as they laced together. "I would never harm you," he said. "Not ever. I would raise my hand only to shield you." "I know," Maeve whispered. And she did. She knew it in her bones. This man, who had given her patience instead of pressure, respect instead of control, was nothing like the man who had once defined her world. "Among my people," Skyle said carefully. "When a man wishes to court a woman, he must prove himself. To her family. Through gifts. Through action." He drew a breath. "But you have no blood family here, only those who have chosen you. So I ask you directly, may I court you, Maeve? May I try to earn your heart, as you have already taken mine?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "My heart is not whole," she said. "It carries fractures, missing pieces, scars that may never fully disappear." "Then we are alike," Skyle replied simply, touching his chest where his own scars rested unseen. "Broken things, when joined, can become stronger than they ever were alone." Before she could answer, chaos erupted at the edge of the camp. Dogs barked, horses screamed. Red Mesa riders rushed from their lodges with weapons drawn. Maeve and Skyle rose instantly. "Raiders?" Maeve asked. Skyle shook his head, listening. "No, one person on foot." They pushed through the gathering crowd and found a woman collapsed just inside the camp boundary. Maeve froze in recognition. It was Elin Beck, the shopkeeper's daughter from the settlement. Her dress was torn. Her feet bled. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. "Maeve!" Elin gasped when she saw her. "Please, help me. He's lost his mind. He's coming." "Who?" someone demanded, but Maeve already knew. "Rourke Maddox," Elin sobbed. "He gathered men, dangerous men. He's coming at dawn. He swore he'd burn this camp to the ground if they don't return you." Ishara pushed through the crowd at once, gripping Elin firmly. "To my lodge. Now." As the Red Mesa women tended Elin's wounds, Teon called an emergency council. Maeve was included without question. Between trembling breaths, Elin told her story. Maddox had grown more unhinged through the winter. When the Greycoat Dragoons found no trace of Maeve, he accused the settlement of betrayal. Harlan Beck had dared to tell him to let her go. Maddox beat him to death inside his own store. "My father's last words," Elin cried, "were to warn you. He said no woman deserved what Maddox planned. So I ran. I walked through night and day to reach you." "How many men?" Teon asked. 20, maybe more, Elin said. "Not soldiers, Ash Spur men. He promised them whiskey, and women." Silence fell over the lodge. "This is no longer about one woman," an elder said grimly. "It's about all of us." "We could fight," Kovar offered. "We have warriors." And they have guns, another replied, and no honor. Maeve stood slowly, resolve hardening inside her. No, she said. No more blood spilled because of me. I will go. Maeve, Scale began. She raised her hand. He wants me. Only me. And if you go, Ishara said bluntly, he kills you, slowly. Then his men attack anyway. Men like that never keep promises. Despair threatened to close in. Then we move, Taeon decided. Break camp now. Ride hard for the canyon lands. We know that ground. They do not. The children? The elders? They will endure, he said firmly. We have survived worse. This is not cowardice, Taeon added. This is wisdom. The camp erupted into controlled urgency. Lodges came down. Supplies were packed. Horses were loaded with practiced speed. Maeve worked beside them all, her hands moving automatically, while Elan's words echoed in her mind. He killed my father for helping you. And Maeve knew, whatever came next, the storm had truly arrived. This is because of me, Maeve Hollis said to Naira, as they hurriedly tied bundles and loaded packs. No, Naira answered without hesitation. This is because of Rourke Maddox, his choices, his cruelty. Evil belongs to the one who commits it, not to the one who survives it. Maeve swallowed hard. Scoil appeared beside her, slipping something into her palm, a knife wrapped in a beaded sheath. Remember what you were taught, he said quietly, if it comes to that. I remember, Maeve replied. The weight at her belt felt unfamiliar but grounding. They rode out before first light, a silent river of families moving across the prairie. Maeve rode near the center, flanked by Red Mesa riders who had wordlessly made themselves her shield. Behind them, smoke curled into the sky. Fires had been left burning to give the illusion of life, precious minutes bought with ash and embers. As dawn broke, turning the grasslands gold, Maeve heard it. Hooves, many of them, still distant, but closing fast. Her pulse thundered, yet she kept her posture steady, recalling every lesson Skyle had drilled into her. Then Kovar pointed sharply toward the horizon. Dust, he said. They're coming. Ride, Taeon commanded. The band surged forward. What followed was a brutal race. The people of Red Mesa cut through ravines, crossed shallow streams, and threaded paths only they knew. The Ash Spur men followed relentlessly, driven by greed and the promise of blood. By mid-morning, Maeve saw the canyon ahead, a narrow passage that meant safety, but also deadly delay. If the outlaws reached them there, slaughter was certain. Maeve pulled her horse aside. Scoil noticed instantly. What are you doing? Buying time, she said. They want me. If I draw them away. We stay together, he argued. She shook her head, already turning her horse. Tell Ishara thank you. Tell Naira she is the sister I never had. Tell Taeon his mercy saved more than my life. She met Skyle's eyes, steady despite the fear. And tell yourself, you taught me how to choose who I am. Before he could reach her, Maeve spurred her horse away from the band, angling across the open plain. It worked. Shouts rang out. Riders peeled away from the main force, giving chase. Maeve rode low over her horse's neck, moving as one with the animal, just as Skyle had taught her. But skill could only carry her so far. They gained on her. Her horse stumbled in a hidden prairie dog hole. The world flipped. She hit the ground hard, rolled with the impact, and came up gripping her knife. 5 men surrounded her. Rourke Maddox dismounted slowly at their center. Well now, he sneered. Looks like my worthless wife thinks she's a warrior. Maeve straightened, blood on her lip. I'm not your wife, and I was never worthless. He struck her, sending her to the ground. You are what I say you are, he spat. What I carved into you. Maeve pushed herself upright and froze. Dust clouds surged from two directions. From one side came the red Mesa Riders, circling back like a closing trap. From the other, uniforms, horses in formation, the Greycoat Dragoons. Captain Reed Colton had kept his word, or Elin Beck's warning had reached ears willing to listen. Either way, Rourke Maddox's terror ended there. The fight was swift and decisive. Caught between warriors and cavalry, the outlaws broke. Some fled, others surrendered. Rourke tried to run. He didn't make it far. Skile's arrow struck his shoulder, spinning him into the dirt. As silence settled, Maeve stood over the man who had once ruled her life. "You're mine," Rourke snarled. "I marked you." "You marked yourself," Maeve replied calmly. "As a coward, as a man who confuses fear for power, as someone too small to stand without hurting others." Captain Colton dismounted nearby, face set in stone. "Rourke Maddox," he said, "you're under arrest for the murder of Harlan Beck, conspiracy to incite violence, and crimes yet to be counted." As soldiers dragged Rourke away, his curses filled the air. Maeve didn't flinch. His words no longer touched her. Skyle dismounted beside her, checking her injuries with careful hands. "That was foolish," he said, relief outweighing rebuke. "Brave, but foolish." "I learned from the best," Maeve replied, leaning into him. Then her hand flew to her throat. "The necklace," she whispered. "I lost it." "It's here," Ishira said, stepping forward, holding the turquoise beads. "A little dust, no damage." Maeve exhaled, slow, steady, like herself, unbroken. "Much like someone else I know," Ishara murmured as she fastened the turquoise necklace around Maeve Hollis's neck. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You were asked if you would allow him to court you. What answer will you give?" Maeve lifted her eyes to Skyle. This was the man who had rescued her not only from danger, but from erasure, who had never once treated her as an object to be owned or a burden to be managed, but as a woman worthy of dignity, choice, and devotion. "Yes," Maeve said simply. Skyle's smile broke across his face, radiant as first light over the prairie. The ceremony unfolded beneath a wide bowl of stars. The entire band gathered in quiet joy. Maeve stood before the sacred fire, no longer the shattered woman who had once crawled bleeding through thorns, but someone reshaped by suffering into her truest form. She wore a gown of soft white doeskin, its delicate beadwork crafted over many patient weeks by the Red Mesa women. Naira had woven eagle feathers into her dark hair, now long and lustrous with health. The turquoise necklace glimmered against her throat, catching firelight with every breath, but it was the marking on her back that mattered most. At Maeve's request, Ishira had helped her transform the scar left by cruelty. Using ancestral methods and plant-based inks, the healer had woven the wound into a new design. A phoenix rising from flame, wings spread wide across Maeve's shoulders. The word worthless still existed within the design, but now it was nothing more than ash beneath the firebird's wings. "You understand what you choose," Teon said formally, though kindness shone in his eyes. "To join with one of our people is to become one of our people, fully and without condition." "I understand," Maeve answered, her voice steady. "I choose this man, this family, this life." Skyle stood across from her in ceremonial dress, watching her with such open love it still stole her breath. He had followed every tradition of courtship, offering gifts not only to Maeve, but to all who had claimed her as kin. He had proven himself again and again, though Maeve had known her answer long before the final ritual. "And you, Skyle," Teon continued, "do you understand that this woman comes to you not as possession, but as equal? That her strength stands beside yours, not beneath it?" "I do," Skyle replied. "I choose her as she is, warrior, healer, survivor. I will walk with her, never above her, for all our days. Ishura stepped forward with a leather cord, adorned with shells and beads. In the old way, she said, binding their hands together. We join you as one. But remember, her gaze fixed on Maeve, any binding that becomes a cage may be undone. As the cord tightened, tears spilled down Maeve's cheeks, not from fear, but from joy so deep it overwhelmed her. She had the right to leave, the power to stay, the freedom to choose love without surrendering herself. The ceremony flowed onward with songs and blessings. One by one, members of the band stepped forward with gifts and warm words. Even those who had once doubted the white woman now smiled and called her sister. Maeve had earned her place, not through blood, but through courage and refusal to break. When the formal rites ended, the celebration erupted. Maeve was pulled into the dance, laughing as children clutched her hands and spun her in circles. A year ago, she had believed joy was gone forever. Now it surged through her, wild and unstoppable. You dance like you were born to it, Skyle said, catching her as she spun past. I had good teachers, Maeve laughed. For dancing, that was Naira. For joy, you. They moved together as drums thundered and voices lifted in song. Around them, the camp celebrated more than a union. It celebrated triumph, over cruelty, over domination, over the lie that some lives mattered less. Later, beneath a sky scattered with stars, Maeve and Skyle walked to their new lodge. Inside, buffalo robes formed a warm nest. Maeve's few belongings rested naturally among Skyle's, as though they had always shared the space. Are you afraid? Skyle asked softly. Maeve considered the question. Fear had once been her constant companion, but now, no, she said with quiet certainty. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid. I know who I am. And I know who we choose to be, Skyle replied, tracing the edge of her phoenix tattoo through the soft leather of her dress. That must have hurt. Less than leaving it unchanged, Maeve said. Ishura taught me we can't always erase our scars, but we can decide what story they tell. And what does yours say? Maeve met his gaze, wisdom bright in her eyes. It tells of a woman burned down to nothing who chose to rise, who learned that worth is not assigned, but claimed, that love is not ownership, but partnership. That strength is not the absence of scars, but the courage to transform them. A powerful story, Skyle murmured, drawing her close. One worth telling our children someday. Children, Maeve echoed softly, wonder in her voice. Once the thought would have terrified her. But now she could imagine it. She could imagine it clearly now, teaching daughters to stand unafraid, to know their strength, and raising sons who understood respect instead of ownership. Outside, the celebration slowly softened as families drifted back to their lodges. But inside their new home, Maeve Hollis and Skyle remained awake, speaking in low voices deep into the night. They shared hopes and plans, staying with the band through the winter, then one day traveling to the distant mountains Skyle remembered from his youth. They would learn side by side, not to complete one another, but to grow together. Two souls shaped by loss who found balance, not rescue, in each other. As dawn neared, Maeve stepped outside to greet the rising sun, a quiet ritual she had learned from Ishura. The sky ignited in shades of pink and gold, washing the prairie in promise. She touched the turquoise necklace resting at her throat, thinking of the women who had worn it before her, women who had faced storms and survived them. Sunrise after storm, she whispered to the brightening horizon. It was her name now, given by the grandmothers in the way of the people. The woman once called Clara Whitfield had died among the thorns. But Sunrise After Storm lived, stronger for having been broken, more beautiful for having been healed. Skyle joined her, draping a blanket over both their shoulders. Together they watched the sun climb higher, scattering the final shadows of night. Behind them the camp stirred awake, children laughing, dogs barking, the familiar sounds of belonging. "No regrets?" Skyle asked quietly. Maeve thought of the settlement she had left behind, of a life chosen for her instead of by her. She thought of Rourke Maddox, now condemned for murder, likely still raging about the woman he once tried to erase. She thought of the word carved into her back, now transformed into art and triumph. "How could I regret the road that brought me here?" she said softly. "Every wound, every tear, every moment of despair, they were all steps toward this sunrise, this life, this love." An eagle cried overhead, circling high on the morning air. Maeve followed its flight, remembering Skyle's story of the hawk with a broken wing that learned to soar higher than before. Only now did she fully understand what he had meant. That sometimes breaking is not an ending, but a beginning. "What are you thinking?" Skyle asked, watching the bird with her. "That I was worth saving after all," Maeve answered simply. "Not because of what I could give or become for others, but because I existed. Because every person deserves the chance to discover who they truly are." "Wise words from my wife," Skyle said, the title warm and reverent. "Your partner," Maeve corrected gently. "Your equal. Your choice. Just as you are mine." As the sun rose fully, bathing the prairie in gold, Maeve felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She was no longer defined by cruelty or by lies spoken about her worth. She was Sunrise After Storm, wife to Skyle, granddaughter to Ishara, sister to a people who had chosen her as she had chosen them. The phoenix on her back seemed to lift its wings with every breath, ready to rise into whatever future awaited. For the first time in her life, Maeve looked ahead without fear. Years later, when her daughters asked about the marking on her back, she would tell them the truth, that someone had once tried to write her story for her, to measure her worth by his own smallness, and that she had refused that story. She had chosen her own ending, and risen from the ashes of who she was told to be into who she truly was. "Remember," she would say, touching the turquoise beads that would one day belong to them, "your worth comes from within. No one can take it from you unless you allow it. You are daughters of the people, daughters of survivors, daughters of those who choose love over fear. Let that be your story," she would whisper. "And rise. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless." Aviso Legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure, but every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.